As your practice grows, it's so important to be able to stay organized and keep on top of things, especially when it comes to documentation, filing insurance claims, keeping appointments straight, and getting reminders to people. Well, there's a great solution for all of that, and that is TherapyNotes. TherapyNotes is the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. It's who I use in my practice. And so go check them out today, therapynotes.com. And if you use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get 2 months free. So check them out today, therapynotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 119 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer. Glad you've joined me for the podcast. Glad you're here. Hope you're having a good week so far, or weekend, whenever you might be listening to this. And if you're joining us for the first time, glad you're here. Glad you found us. Hope you'll take time to subscribe to the podcast and come back for more. And if you're coming back for more, again, I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad you're with me on this journey. So I'm looking forward to folks hearing from my guest today, Alyssa Adams. Alyssa is another one of those people I met online, and we had, it's interesting how this year I've had kind of a theme with my podcasts. Wasn't really intentional, but I think, stuff just tends to bubble up and rise to the surface when it's maybe the stuff that people need or want the most. But one of the things that, it seems like a big theme this year is just being able to think about diversifying your practice and thinking about ways to diversify your income streams, and just maybe adding services outside of the traditional therapy services. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Alyssa and our conversation around those things. Alyssa is another one of those great therapists that has branched out into consulting. And so I'm looking forward to you just kind of getting her spin on things. Alyssa was a delight to talk to. So we'll get to Alyssa here in just a minute. And speaking of coaching and mentoring and all of that, one of the things that I've mentioned in previous episodes, and we're getting close to the deadline here, because as this podcast is coming out, we've just got a couple of more weeks left for the focus groups that I'm holding this year or this spring to get started. And for those of you that might not be familiar with a focus group, another people refer to these are mastermind groups. But as I've said before, I just like the name focus group better, because to me that's more descriptive. But it's a wonderful way to get together with a group of people that are on the same kind of leg of the journey that you're on. And starting these groups that will begin on March the 26th. And going to be having hopefully 2 groups. I think we're getting to that critical mass where we're going to be able to split into 2 groups. One that's going to focus mostly on folks that are just getting started in practice and trying to get their sea legs, if you will, and getting into private practice and learning all the stuff that you need to learn. And the other one is just going to be for those folks that have maybe been in practice a while, and they're trying to figure out kind of next steps to kind of take their practice to the next level or the next phase or whatever you want to call it. But with the focus groups, they're going to be facilitated by me, and we're keeping them small. At the most, there'll be 6 to 8 people in each group, and it'll be spending an hour 2 times a month via Zoom just to talk about our practices and have conversations. And we'll also have a private Facebook group so that we can keep conversations going between the times that we meet. But I know for me personally, every time I've been involved in something like a focus group or a mastermind group, it has just absolutely just gotten me way ahead in my practice. It's just given me ideas and given me the motivation to make the changes I needed to make in order to make my practice thrive and grow and be successful. So I want to personally invite you to the focus groups. And if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/focus group, you can fill out the application. And I'll say this, focus groups might not be for everyone, but one of the things that I've done with the focus groups is a way to have not only kind of group coaching and group mentoring, but I've tried to price it at a level that is going to be affordable for people. It's only going to be $89 a month, and it's a 4-month commitment. And the way I like to think about doing things like this is I want to know that people are getting a return on their investment. So if you were able to learn how to get one more client or add clinicians to your practice that would get you $89 more per month, it would pay for itself. So to me, in that sense, it's kind of a kind of a no-brainer in terms of return on investment. So anyway, I want to invite you to that, practiceoftherapy.com/focus group. And the other thing that's coming up, and it's coming up pretty quickly here, when this episode comes out, this will be happening the following week on March 17th. I've got another free webinar that I'm doing with my friend Julie Harris over at Green Oak Accounting. And we're going to be talking about contractors and employees and about what you need to know to add people to your practice to kind of take your practice to the next level. This is information I wish I had. This is stuff that some of it's stuff I've learned the hard way, but also learned from others about how you go about adding contractors or employees and the things that you need to know about all of that in terms of how to pay them and if you're in the United States, the IRS forms and all that kind of stuff that you need to know about when hiring people for your practice. So that's what this webinar is going to cover. You can get to that. You can sign up for that. If you'll just go to practiceoftherapy.com/hiring webinar, that'll get you to the right place to register for the webinar. And again, it's going to be at 12 noon Eastern time on March the 17th. And even if you can't be there then, sign up anyway. That way you can get the replay of the webinar so that you can get that information. And looking forward to doing that with Julie here pretty quickly. So glad, I hope to have you for that. So be sure and mark those two things down, take note of them. Join the focus group. Love to have you for that. That's a little more of a commitment, and I hope that you'll be interested in joining me for that. And the other one is the webinar. So just kind of make a mental note of that. And again, there'll be links in the show notes here to get you to both of those things. So again, I'm happy to have my guest for this episode, Alyssa Adams. I realized after I recorded this was a little bit shorter interview, but there's no reflection on Alyssa. It's just that we said everything that needed to be said and had a good conversation. So, without further ado, here's my friend Alyssa Adams. Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so happy to have with me today Alyssa Adams. And Alyssa is, again, one of those great people I ran into online and started a conversation. And so, Alyssa, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to being here.
Yeah, and Melissa's superpower is really just around helping people leverage their skill sets to maybe move into coaching and doing kind of some of the things that Alyssa and I both are doing here in this whole private practice world, private practice space, or therapist counselor space. So, Alyssa, as I start out with everyone, why don't you tell folks a little bit about your private practice journey and how you've kind of landed where you are?
Sure, absolutely. I feel like it's been kind of a long and meandering journey, as it probably has been for most of us. But yeah, so right now I am doing a few different things. So I kind of like the variety to keep the variety in my work. So I work with therapy clients, specifically who have anxiety disorders. And then I have these other coaching elements to my practice where I do business coaching for therapists and other coaches. I do a bit of leadership coaching. And it took me a while to really settle into the idea of like building a business, building a practice where I'm serving people, but the practice is really based around my expertise and not around just like one modality specifically. So I think through a lot of different iterations of kind of what I wanted things to look like, I sort of settled on this place around trying to really build my practice in a way where I'm serving people in a variety of different ways. It's fulfilling. I'm always kind of tapping into what it is that I want to be doing, how I can help and serve people in different ways, and really creating some variety. So it's been cool to step into that and then also help other folks do the same thing around like what can you do outside of the therapy room, right? That would help you kind of expand and grow your practice.
Right. Yeah. And I know as we spoke about before we started recording is it's just one of the themes that I think I've run into this year is just the importance of being able to look at other ways to really do something beyond just the therapy room for therapists, because, that's kind of our bread and butter. But one of the things that quickly happens that a lot of people discovered is that they kind of hit a ceiling to some degree about their earning potential and just being able to expand their practices in different ways. Certainly you could start a group practice and bring on other therapists, but just for therapists personally, just being able to expand their knowledge base and just, like you said, their expertise. So tell folks, I guess the question would be is just what have you found that has worked for you and how you're helping others as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one of the things that kind of helped me a little bit as I thought about how to bring coaching onto my practice is really like, why coaching? Why would I want to add that particular type of arm to my business? I think as therapists, right there, we have such a rich skill set around helping create change and create transformation in people, right? It's really a huge part of what we do. So it was interesting to think about like how that can look different under a different umbrella, or how do we use some of those skills and translate them into the coaching space? And what's different, what's similar, and kind of just really learning about how to help support people in a very different way, but yet that you're really well prepared for. So I really kind of explored why add coaching. So I did go back to get some additional training in coaching so that I felt like I could kind of wear a different hat when I'm helping my coaching folks versus when I'm helping my therapy clients. So that was something that was really helpful to me, is to be able to conceptualize cases differently, understand how to help and support people in different ways. How do you create change as a coach versus as a therapist? And there are just such interesting like intersections there where, you get to really use your skill set, but kind of in a different way, helping people at different points in their life and career. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I've had that conversation with several other people. I just think, one of the, I think maybe, I guess the right word is a stigma that we have in our own training, just as therapists and the whole clinical side. There's maybe some, a little bit of adversity against being a coach versus a therapist.
Yeah.
And so how did you kind of reconcile that for yourself and just thinking about all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I've tried to be kind of an ambassador into both worlds, right? And, helping coaches who I have as colleagues better understand therapy and what that looks like and how that's different, how to work together. And then also therapists really better understand coaching and how that's different and kind of how we can sort of work together in that space. I think, there definitely is, I think, some myths out there too about coaching. I think since it is a less regulated field, we can sometimes see, folks who maybe don't have a lot of training or experience or background kind of stepping into spaces that feel maybe uncomfortable for some of us or feel kind of worrisome, of course, right? So I think there is also room and space for us to be really well trained as coaches and really understand the parameters of coaching and how to kind of stay in that space when we're in it. So I think if we kind of come at it from this like really open place of just better understanding what that actually looks like, what it is, what are some of the skills, it was interesting, I think, to do some coach training around learning the areas of overlap that there are with our existing skill set as therapists, and then really stepping into the space around like things that are kind of different, and things that I did not know and that were new to me. So I think always coming at it from that kind of place of being just open and wanting to be curious about it, for me, has been really helpful. And also, as I talk to other folks about it, how can you make this fit and still keep the integrity of your clinical practice as well as the integrity in your coaching space?
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some of the things that you've landed on with that? And just, I guess a big question that people ask, and I've asked it myself, is how is coaching different than therapy?
Yeah. Oh man, I feel like I could talk about that all day. There's lots to say about that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think at its most basic, and this is not an exhaustive list, right? There's lots of ways it's different, I think. But, one of the ways, of course, is that I always have my diagnosis hat on when I'm working with people as a therapist, right? I'm conceptualizing under the framework usually of a diagnosis of some type of mental health concern that they've come in for help with. Coaching doesn't have that component, of course, right? So often we're moving towards a very specific goal, wanting to maybe grow their business and get more clients, or in the leadership space, they're wanting to communicate with their team better or exemplify stronger executive presence when they're meeting with people. So I think the topics on the list are usually different to me, at least in my work. For me, what I found helpful, at least in keeping things sort of separate, is that my niche areas are pretty different, so that it feels really kind of clean and clear in my head. Since I've been doing therapy for a long time, right? I think I'm kind of wired as a therapist, as many of us are, right? So to sort of step outside of that, I wanted things to be really kind of clear and different, so that the topics would feel very different. How I communicate about them is different. How I think about the person in front of me is different. So I think sometimes coaching can have a little bit more of a narrow focus. It's more kind of targeted in many ways. So those are kind of the ways that for me, I help keep my different hats on.
Yeah. One way I've heard it described is with coaching, you're really helping people work on a specific problem versus working on a specific condition. Or state of being, in that, coaching someone through a marriage problem, maybe they're having trouble talking about parenting. You could do coaching around that issue versus, marriage therapy, which is really more, I'm an MFT, so I think this way just in terms of marriage, but working on how do you make more of an emotional connection within the marriage will be more therapeutic.
Sure. Absolutely. I always think too of like, if we're in a space of processing a lot of emotions or things that have come up or, stressors, and we're in this place of exploration that tends to be more suited for therapy, right? That's more of kind of a therapeutic umbrella to it. Often we're taking folks who are kind of in a place of suffering and helping them kind of come back to baseline, come back to kind of how they were before. Where coaching, as you said, can be a lot more specific and kind of focused on moving the direction of this particular goal or, increasing a skill set in a particular area. Not to say that there isn't overlap at certain times, but the kind of overall focus and direction always feels very different to me.
Right. Well, to change gears just a little bit, I know one of the things that you've been working on is really helping therapists move into the whole area of adding coaching as part of their services. And so tell folks about that and just kind of maybe some strategies around that, and just thinking about, how you help people do that, and also just ideas around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a broad question.
Yeah, I'll do my best to try to dive in to make that succinct in my answer. So usually when I'm talking with people, there's a few reasons it feels like come up over and over again as to why they might want to add coaching, right? It's either, they kind of have a full practice and they're looking for ways to diversify. And I think often we get people who are a bit feeling a little uninspired or feeling like they want to add or infuse their work with some creativity. They want something different. They want to try something kind of new and leveraging their skill set in a slightly different way. Want to work with a different population. So I think, there are all these different kind of factors that I think people bring up when they first start to explore the idea of adding coaching. So we'll dive into that a little bit more, like why they want to add coaching, how they want it to look. There's so many different types and focuses in coaching. We talk a lot about what type they might want to add. And is that similar to their therapy specialization, or is it something that's very different? Some people kind of have different perspectives on that and what kind of feels right and fits for them. And then we're getting really clear on how they want to help people, what they want to kind of target as the thing that they do in coaching, kind of niching into that specialty for coaching. And then we're talking a little bit about like how to get visible, how to get coaching clients, how to pull those folks into your practice, and also taking people who reach out to your practice and help them go down the right chute in terms of, is this going to be a coaching client? Is this going to be a therapy client? Depending on how similar your specialization areas are. So we're doing a lot of the kind of exploring and setting up of things to help them bring on coaching clients. And then inevitably it turns to, how do I use my coaching skills? How do I not kind of shift into therapy mode, or how do I really keep the integrity of the coaching process with someone? So it's kind of the business building pieces, and then also the more like clinical pieces, I think, that come up.
Right. Yeah. And it's, I know for me, I've kind of been through this same journey myself, where I started a traditional solo private practice as a therapist, and then I added other therapists. And then, I think for me, doing what I'm doing with the practice of therapy, it really came out of a passion to help others, because I got excited about doing more and about helping other people learn what I've learned along the way. And so, like you said earlier, I think it really fits into that whole creative side of being able to in some ways just kind of give back from our own experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably in a similar vein, I want people to kind of love their business, right? This is, there's that whole piece of the kind of like accidental business owner, like you're here to want to provide services and serve your clients, and you love the work. And sometimes folks don't love the business building side of things, right? So if we can also kind of help them love the growth of their practice too, if that can feel really rewarding in and of itself.
Right. Well, I think for anyone that goes into private practice or goes into business to be a practitioner, they go into it for a lot of different reasons. But I think a lot of times the big reason or the big why that people have is that they want the freedom that it offers of being your own boss, really setting your own schedule, and just having that autonomy that you can't necessarily get when you're working for somebody else at that level. And, the other thing too is that I think we need to be, you need to have a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit in order to do well in this whole arena.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And And to your point, I love helping people really kind of identify as a therapist entrepreneur, right? And how do we think about building that business based on your expertise? Why would you want to diversify? Why might you want to add coaching, right? Is this something that may help increase your profit, right? So being able to kind of step into that space as an entrepreneur and look at your business from this objective perspective around what will help me have more autonomy, have more freedom, have more financial stability, can be really eye-opening, I think, for people when they're kind of allowed to think in that way, allowed to see themselves as an entrepreneur, almost giving themselves permission to think about it as a business as well.
Right. Yeah, I think it's always important to think outside the box and get outside those traditional roles. And I think the people that, I think for the most part, people that are able to do that, and as I like to say, give themselves permission to do that, they find their work much more fulfilling and just more rewarding to be able to branch out in that way. So I want to be mindful of your time, and thank you for being on here. But tell folks more about how they can get in touch with you and about the things that you have to offer.
Sure, absolutely. So people are welcome to schedule time to chat with me. They can go to my website at dralyssaadams.com. And that's where I have information about how we can talk one-on-one. I do networking groups in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area for therapists. I have lots of different things going on. So that's the best place to kind of find out more about what's happening with me. And yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone in your audience. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. And we'll have all this in the show notes and the show summary, just to help people get to it easier. So, well, Alyssa, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I enjoyed our conversation, and hopefully we'll be able to have another one here soon.
Thank you so much. I love chatting with you.
Yes. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Alyssa. I know I just thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with her. She is just a gentle spirit, and I very much appreciate that about her. You be sure and check out her things over at dralyssaadams.com. And again, we'll have links for that in the show notes and the show summary. One of the things, I know that our interview was maybe a little bit shorter than they normally are, but the thing that just really resonated for me about our conversation is just the importance of being able to allow ourselves to kind of feed that creative side for ourselves, and really also recognizing that you have expertise in a lot of areas that maybe you don't give yourself credit for. I think a lot of us kind of tend to suffer from that imposter syndrome. You've heard me talk about a lot before, but you really do have a lot of knowledge. If you think about it, for those of us in this field, in these helping fields, most all of us are master's level or higher. And if you look at it percentage wise, probably less than 10% of the people in our country hold master's degrees. So, and if you think about the percentage of people specific to the helping professions, it's even smaller than that. So we have a lot to offer people. And I think people are hungry for that, and people want that. And so, as I like to say, give yourself permission to put yourself out there, to share your expertise, to share your knowledge in whatever way works best for you. So, again, thanks to Alyssa for being on the podcast, and be sure and check her things out. The other thing too is be sure and check out our sponsor for today's podcast, TherapyNotes. And as I mentioned, always, they are who I use in my practice, and absolutely could not do my practice without them. They are really kind of one of the top electronic health record systems in the country. I just read the other day that they've got like over 80,000 people that are subscribed to their services, and they are really top notch. And if you'll go over to TherapyNotes.com and just use the coupon code Gordon, Gordon, you can get 2 months of their services for free to try out. And they're just really, it's a great platform. So be sure to check them out. And also be sure to mark down on your calendars the focus groups that are going to start on March the 26th. And you can apply for that over at practiceoftherapy.com/focus group, and also the free webinar that's coming up on March the 17th at 12 noon Eastern time. And again, you can get to that at practiceoftherapy.com/hiring webinar. And again, partnering with my good friend Julie Harris over at Green Oak Accounting, and it's always and Julie and I are going to have a great conversation for you to listen in on around hiring people and contractors and learning all those things that I wish I had known when I first started hiring people. So the other thing too I'll mention is be sure and check out the website, practiceoftherapy.com. I've always got new stuff coming out, and go over to our cool resources pages there. I've got paperwork packets available. I've got the session note helper. I'm probably going to need to do a whole podcast episode on the session note helper just because people have just really gotten interested in that. And it's a system that you use with Google G Suite in order to streamline writing your session notes and progress notes. And it uses a Google form that you check off what you did in the session, and through the magic of a Google app script or an app script that works on the back end, it creates a narrative based on what you check off. So it's a pretty cool little device, and you can use it in conjunction with your electronic health record system. There is some setup involved, so there's a little bit of setup involved, but I've got those templates for that and the app script available, and it's fairly plug and play. I won't say completely plug and play. You do need to set it up on your end as far as making the app script run so that it saves things into your Google Drive. But anyway, you can get to that at practiceoftherapy.com /session note helper, or you can just go to sessionnotehelper.com and check that out. I've got I've also got an intake form that works the same way that you can embed on your practice website. So again, I'm getting off on a tangent here talking about that, but I just want to make sure people are aware that those tools are available, and you can get all of my tools and things that I recommend on the cool resources page. And you can go to practiceoftherapy.com, and there's a button at the top called cool resources. Just click on that button and you can see the full deal there. So, well, folks, again, thanks for joining me for the podcast. I've got lots of great guests joining me in future episodes. Did a bunch of batch recording this past week, and so got a lot of exciting people I'm looking forward to you hearing from as we move forward. So take care, folks. I hope you have a good rest of your week or weekend whenever you might be listening to the podcast. Now, do take time to subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it, and leave us a review and a rating. That always helps other people find us by doing that. So take care, folks. Hope you have a good rest of your week. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.